Hi everyone, Peter and Grada here from the Purple House Wellness Center in Forth. Great to be back today. We're in Peter's treatment room because Pete is going to do most of the talking because he's actually...
Hello everyone.
Yeah, Peter does a lot of testing. I'll just let me to introduce you a little bit and then you can go for it and I'll have my cup of tea. So Pete does a lot of testing, tests people's metabolic processes, and he has his own chemical station here with chemistry and so on. So he puts the urine and saliva through a lot of tests and also looks at live and dried blood to get answers. So like the blood sometimes shows that something is out of order, and then the other test that Pete does pinpoints exactly whether it's coming from the liver, the kidneys, the heart, or whatever is going on. So this is where Pete spends a lot of his time in this room. But actually just since the last year or something, last 18 months, Peter has noticed something different that he hasn't seen before in clients. So we want to talk about that today. So Pete, go for it.
Well, back in 2009, we went to the States to learn a system called, well, it's the full Biomedics, the full health analysis that we have now, and it was to find answers to help Grada recuperate from her accident as quickly as she could. When we went there, there was a term called anabolic, another called catabolic, and one, it's to do with cell membrane permeability, so how the cells, whether they're more open or more closed, the cell membranes, and we're meant to close at night and open during the day. And I found that I was a bit catabolic, Grada was anabolic at that point in time. We came back and we put that system into practice with our clients, and I found lots of Australians, Tasmanians were anabolic, the biggest percentage of them. But in the last 18 months, after the pandemic, etc. hit us, I've been noticing that lots of clients have become catabolic, which means the cell membrane permeability, or how things go in and out of the cells, is
wrong, faulty, yeah.
That they can go in and out willy-nilly, rather than normally they close at night time and are open during the day. And anabolic means building up, rebuilding. So at night time they become more anabolic, they close up, become less permeable.
So that the body actually, I'm just butting, so the body restores itself, so like the body fills up its own gas tanks during the night. So when you wake up in the morning, you're meant to have lots of energy.
We're meant to live on cellular energy. Every cell makes a certain amount of energy and we're meant to live on that. Anyway, they open up slightly or become slightly catabolic during the day, and we use the energy that they've reproduced overnight. And catabolic means breaking down. So when they close up at night, we go off to sleep. When they open up, we wake up. And with lots of people now that are becoming catabolic, their cell membranes are staying too open, and so their body doesn't think it's time to go to sleep. So those people, they're
exhausted.
They often, suffer with insomnia. They wake up and can't get back off to sleep. And
in the morning, you wake up, you feel as if you've been playing tennis all day. All night.
Well, sometimes they wake up all right, but then an hour or two later they're just totally exhausted.
And also, if your body doesn't restore every 24 hours, you start to use up your core energy.
Yeah, and if that's been going on for a long time, the core energy becomes depleted, and it can alter people's personalities. I've had some people come to me just recently, and they say, I've become a nasty person. I snap at everyone, and I'm just not the person I used to be. And I've discovered I've been catabolic.
That's a classic sign, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that affects your mental resilience and emotional resilience.
But it's often after they've been catabolic for quite some time. So not being able to sleep properly, waking up very early and not getting back to sleep.
Getting irritated and triggered.
Most of the fluid in the bloodstream goes, that we take in goes to the bowels instead of staying within the body and in the bloodstream. So often the live blood will look all dehydrated and the red cells are sticking together. So once those red cells stick together, people are depleted they lose energy as well. So it's the cell membrane of every cell of the body, they're made up of fats. Mixture of saturated and unsaturated fats. And depending upon whether the mixture is right, depends on whether you're in that rhythm, anabolic during the night, catabolic during the day.
Mm-hmm.
But when people are catabolic, they need mainly saturated fats to help close up the cell membranes.
Okay, what is saturated fat?
Saturated fats are your butter, cream, coconut oil and meat fats.
Mm-hmm. So Pete has a tendency, when his body goes out of whack, he will revert back to being catabolic, and then he needs to, which hasn't happened for years, by the way, thank goodness.
Because I have lots of butter and cream.
He probably eats a packet of butter a day, right? So, and that's very, very good for him. So for catabolics, by the way, fish oils are some of the worst, because sometimes we get clients and they say, I read that fish oil is good for me, I've been taking fish oil, but it isn't, that's the worst thing for you. Also the other thing, if you're catabolic and you're loud and you don't know, of course, because there are not many tests as far as we know. The Biomedics testing, which we do, which we learned in Chicago, is the only testing in Australia that's available that can pinpoint this big imbalance. So if you're actually feeling tired and exhausted or irritable, or your husband or spouse has been sent that person
and
to
you're not sleeping well.
Because what are the more serious symptoms? Like I was going to say, catabolics tend to have a stroke pattern, don't they?
They often do.
If it gets like really out of control,
It's
like a fire, and we actually have seen more strokes in the last 2 years.
It's like rust and breakdown in the body.
Because I've had clients, like young clients, 40-year-old moms or 30-year-old, even as young as 30-year-old moms and dads who are recovering from strokes, and they come to us for help because they're recovering from stroke. So I'm wondering if that's all tied up with the seeing more catabolic imbalances in people. Whereas anabolics, I just want to say this, people, the anabolic cells are too close, the energy inside the cells start to ferment, and this can eventually create cancers, right? So that is the downside.
Oxygen can't get into the cells.
Yeah. So actually, if you think of you as a human being, you're like a flower, like a sunflower. So the flower literally closes up at night, or the sun goes down, the flower responds to all those impulses in the universe. The flowers close down, and your cells do the same, and that means you need to go to bed and the body wants to go to sleep. But of course, in some people it's doing the exact opposite, and then in the morning you wake up, the sun, let's say you're a flower, the sun comes up, you see the flower opens up. That happens inside our bodies, in the cells, exactly the same, and we have 50 trillion cells, I believe, in our body. So imagine if all that would be like huge paddocks of sunflowers. Imagine as far as the eye could stretch. Imagine the sun comes up and they do the opposite. Let's say they all stay closed, and then at night they open up. The farmer would get worried, wouldn't he? Like the farmer would be panicking, but we should be panicking when our body is doing that. So Peter, so what are some of the absolute key signs or alarm bells or red flags for people for anabolics?
Well,
want to just pinpoint it again?
They are depleted in energy for a start. That's usually the case.
Even if you eat well, by the way.
That people come to me, they are usually lacking energy. They don't sleep well. They have loose bowel actions.
Or irritable bowel.
They often have low blood pressures and a low white cell count.
What about adrenal fatigue?
Well,
can be sometimes.
It can be because they've probably been living on coffee. So they've been stimulating their adrenals and that's where they've been getting their energy from. And they've also been relying on their core energy, and as we said earlier, once that runs out, you're in big trouble. So
sometimes, people can suffer a stroke that of course needs to be prevented at all costs. But so like the emotional, mental trigger, red flags, that you've lost your nice personality. You're like a devilish version of yourself, like you're moody, you're grumpy, you're triggered or angry, or you lash out, and that's not your normal self.
So some people think it's because they just haven't been getting enough sleep. Well, that's on top of it.
And so what we recommend
part of it, but if they often come back to me 3 or 4 weeks later, some people who have been lacking energy and their personality's changed, and they just can't get over how good they feel with having saturated fats and minimising runny oils, and then having 3 catabolic capsules with their evening meal. Now
that's all it takes.
There was one older lady come to me with the diagnosis of Huntington's chorea, which is a degenerative neurological disease, no cure, but she was wheeled in a wheelchair because she just couldn't walk anymore. And she was very catabolic as well.
She was probably the most catabolic person you've ever seen.
She needed 3 of these at midday as well as 3 in the evening, and she got up and walked and had about 3 really good years with the family before she deteriorated worse and ended up in the nursing home. So
and that's a genetic condition.
All the symptoms aren't all the diagnosis that you may have. So there might be some imbalances that will,
that you need to investigate.
Help reverse things, or not, just slow the process down.
Well, also with our little grandson Elijah, who's got a genetic mutation that was from birth, by the way. Whenever Pete tested him, he was extremely catabolic.
He's very catabolic.
And so even though there is medicine now that he has to inject himself, and it's turning his life around, like with medical solution, which we're so thankful for. But even in spite of that, Peter's tested him and he's still catabolic. So he also takes catabolic, and it probably kept his organs as healthy, for all those 12 years before we got the diagnosis. So I'm just going to say to you, if this resonates with you, what we're telling you today, and it probably will, because we're seeing a lot of catabolic people due to all the stuff that's been going on in the last 2 years, please book yourself in for a session with Pete. And so he can take a look under the bonnet of the car, right? So he can tell you exactly what's going on. Usually it doesn't take long to turn your health around. If it takes too long, we know we're not on the right track, and we'll say that to you. We'll say we can't help you or whatever. But usually though, people come back and they're jumping up and down, and they just say to us, can't remember that I ever felt this good, right? And that's really what we're about. So, and
the opposite of catabolic is anabolic. So there's a set of nutrients that the body hasn't been getting to put it into imbalance.
Yeah, so, because anabolics are people who wake up in the morning, they just want to sleep all the time.
They can't wake up in the morning properly.
They want to sleep all night.
But their cells still haven't produced energy because they can't get the things into the cells. Yeah. Now, we had a little boy who was always sick.
He was immune, what did they call him?
They called him immune deficiency disorder.
But he was actually anabolic.
They wanted him to go on antibiotics all winter, and I tested him, and he was very anabolic, and he went on anabolic and a few things for his digestion, and
he was a new boy.
He was a new boy. He didn't need antibiotics, and he's hardly been sick since.
And his parents
They got the really bad flu, his parents and his sister, and he didn't get it.
And the doctor was very happy, the GP was very happy for him too, so that was great. Yeah, so come and find the real answers, the real root cause of what's going on in your life, so that don't just satisfy or settle for a band-aid, okay? And if you know of anyone around you or in your family that you think, oh, this reminds me of such and such, please share this video as well. So I hope that it was easy for you to listen to. It's a bit hard to explain these concepts, but so important.
Yeah, very,
especially
very
if you think
important.
of yourself as, you know, you were just a walking community of 50 trillion cells all working together for your health and happiness, right? So they need to work well.
And if our cells all work well, then we'll work well as a whole.
Yeah, then we're happy as well.
Be
and
a
we're looking
healthy and happy human being.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and enjoy the rest of the day, and we hope
have a good week.
Yeah. See you next Tuesday.
Okay.
Bye. Oops, something is covering.